So if you clicked on this video, I have to assume you've already seen Love, Death, and Robots. But if you're one of my subscribers that hasn't, let me break it down real quick. Love, Death, and Robots is that show you scroll past on Netflix every single time because you think the title is kind of whack. At least that's the boat I was in. I didn't care to know what it was because the title seemed kind of melodramatic and boring. But if you're in that boat now, you're missing out on one of the coolest modern anthology series out there. Love, Death, and Robots is a show that explores some really cool and fresh science fiction angles and knows how to have a good time doing it. Each episode is around 6 to 16 minutes and the style ranges from live action to 2D animation to some actually really solid 3D animation as well. If you haven't seen it, you should give it a shot. This will get spoilery. I won't go into the entire plot of each short, but I'm not going to make a lot of effort to dance around stuff either. Like I said, it's an anthology series, so some episodes hit just right, others less so, and some are total misses. And that's what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk about how I rank the episodes worst to best in the first season, which is surprisingly 18 episodes. What the fuck? I thought there was like 10. Alright, so we better fucking get into it then if there are so many. Alright, starting from the very worst. Alternate histories. If this was the first episode you saw of this show, you probably wouldn't care to watch anything else, even if you knew it was an anthology. While the concept of exploring histories where Hitler died before he can have an impact is interesting, the episode can never find its footing with how it wants to explore these threads. It comes down to Hitler dying in an XD random way, and then somehow because he lived a precious few seconds longer before being horribly killed, this changes how world history plays out completely. The episode can only keep a straight face for about 3 minutes though, before it devolves from XD random into straight up fucking iCarly, where rats rule the world or there are time-traveling Nazis. For a show that has some really great concepts for short stories that are told and visualized really well, this is the bottom of the barrel. This feels more like a 2009 Newgrounds animation, both in tone and writing, and if I really wanted to be a dick, I could almost say animation as well. Its only redeeming factor is that it is gracefully one of the shortest episodes in the show. In the runner-up spot for my worst on the show is Blind Spot, which is strange because it should tick a lot of boxes that I usually like. There aren't a lot of action-oriented shorts in this show. Usually it leans more towards the eerie or sci-fi. This is sci-fi, I guess. There are robots attacking an armored vehicle driven by basically another robot, but it definitely leans more into the action than most any other episode. I really like the art, actually. This weird kind of Mega Man Legends-esque art style isn't super popular, but I think it's interesting to look at in short bursts. And the idea for a short where it's a high-octane car chase slash heist sounds pretty good on paper, so how does this episode manage to miss when it's got so much going for it? The answer is probably the characters. The best episodes of this show can introduce a really interesting concept, a pretty strong character or two, and usually a pretty solid twist, which should not be understated. That is very difficult to do in, say, 15 minutes. This episode doesn't accomplish any of that, and the worst of it is the character. Each is a caricature. The badass leader, the no-nonsense lady, the big, strong, dumb guy in the chair, and the dumbfounded, stuttering rookie. And you can't do much past having them be one note, because the short is centered so much around the action. So you need the action to carry it, but it doesn't. It's pretty paint by numbers. You won't see anything you haven't seen before here. And even the little feel-good twist at the end seems pretty soulless. I swear I do actually like this show. We'll get into praising some shit here eventually. Shapeshifters. What a weird one this is, man. I feel like this one really doesn't fit with the rest of the show. It feels like a fan fiction for a show that doesn't exist. It centers around the good old United States Army, and apparently they've got a K9 division like you've never seen. This is a fucking K10 division. They have werewolves. Already you're starting from a very weird spot. So for me, we're already starting on a note that I find really dumb, and the short just gets dumber and dumber from there. For some reason, the werewolf soldiers, who are effectively super soldiers, they can run vast distances at high speeds and have night vision, and yeah, they can turn into wolves, are the outcasts of the army. Like, there is some serious prejudice amongst the ranks against them, which is like, you've lost me even more now. They're superheroes, man. Why would they be getting looked at sideways? They even look like normal dudes when they're not transformed. I just don't get it. Anyway, main werewolf guy's werewolf friend gets killed by a local werewolf, and they're like, what the fuck, man? They aren't supposed to have werewolves. That's our shit. And then main werewolf has to track down local werewolf to have a werewolf duel under the full moon. Insanely epic, friend. The fight's fine, I guess. It's pretty brutal. I like that. And for the most part, I'm always impressed with this kind of animation whenever it's in an episode. It looks really good. Yeah, so main werewolf beats local werewolf, and then he rocks up on his own army base, and he's like, I'm not doing it anymore. I am army werewolf no more. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't think you can do that. You can't just quit, right? This weird power fantasy somehow finds a way to end on an even more perplexing note than it already started on. So, round of applause for that, I guess. You get it? He ripped off his dog tags because he's quitting the army, and he is a dog. You fucking get it? I get it, man. Whoa! Get me the fuck out of here. Next up, and I feel like I might get some grief for this one, The Witness. I feel like a lot of people could like this one based off the art alone. That definitely is the strongest part of the episode. The visuals have this feeling of the camera being impaired almost, like things are constantly shifting out of focus, and the music is loud and distorted, and there's this weird haze that hangs over the whole short, or shots are on angles, and colors seem to strangely pop in some shots, but not others, which helps with the dingy atmosphere that it's trying to hit. But what it comes down to, and why I have it so low on my personal list, is that I'm just not very interested in what's going on. It's a chase. The woman fears for life from a man who clearly just wants to explain himself. So I feel like there isn't really any tension. It's understandable. I probably wouldn't want to have anything to do with a guy I just saw murder someone either. But as a spectator, with the whole story being laid out in front of me, it just seems like the story makes itself less interesting. What's more compelling? A murderer chasing a girl through the streets, or a guy chasing a girl through the streets trying to explain why he murdered someone? You know what I mean? There's a difference there. Maybe if the guy wasn't so clearly flustered and just trying to talk to her at every single pass, and he somehow seemed more intimidating, the chase could have some more merit. But you can't really have that because of the weird time loop, them killing each other twist at the end. You need this guy to be sort of relatable, or at least understandable, because he's a victim of the situation as well, it turns out. And that twist ending does help the short retroactively for sure. But at that point, you're already through it, and you have this thought that, oh, this could be happening to them over and over, and you start to think about it, but then Netflix has already started the next episode. You don't get enough time to really think about the sci-fi twist, so the whole thing can appreciate in your head. Alright, I gotta stop talking about this one because the girl is basically naked for most of it, so I'm probably running out of footage to use. When the Yogurt Took Over is another really short one, and this one might be the weirdest in the whole lot. It explores themes of Big Brother type shit, surrendering your own security, well-being, and freedom to choose to the powers that be, but frames it around something ridiculous like a bowl of yogurt to highlight the absurdity of doing so. But it only really gets there in the final moments. Up until then, it's just a recounting of the events that led the yogurt to power. And it has some points on humanity's self-destructive nature that would lead to the Big Brother situation, but I really wish it explored the ending more, because it asks a question that I personally never thought of. What if Big Brother just up and left? In this situation, the yogurt seems like a pretty benevolent force. It seems like it does good just for the sake of doing good. But if humanity has come to rely on it, what happens once it's not there anymore? Which also leads to the question of, in cases of police states and brutal societal rule, what happens when the evil keeping the infrastructure together just bounces? Fucking see ya, guys. What would happen if that happened to us? I feel like this short asks a really cool question, but doesn't get to explore it. It almost calls for a sequel short where it goes into this. I think it's a really interesting idea, but this one is like 5 minutes long, so not much more to say on it. Up next, we have The Dump. I feel like if I already hadn't seen all 3 seasons of the show at this point, this one might be a little higher up. This feels like your most average episode of the show imaginable. This has it all. The voiceover, the smug guy comeuppance, the dick and balls. Yeah, the show really doesn't mind showing you a cock and balls, does it? It feels almost proud of it. And it's pretty immature sometimes, I think. Anywho, if this is the most average episode in the show, why is it squarely in the bottom half of the list? Shouldn't it be number 9 of 18? I guess when I say average here, I mean more predictable now that I'm more familiar with the show. It really hits all the notes. It even finds a way to have the character is already aware of the supernatural element beat, as well as the character is surprised by the supernatural element beat. The main character is fun, he's got some kick to him. I've always felt like writing someone like that would be the most fun, just the mannerisms and the way they speak, and they capture that all really well. Even the city slicker inspectors played and written and designed well. But the story of the junk monster, despite once again I think being executed pretty well, just isn't the juicy story that this show can pull off. And it's a bit of a tonal tornado as well. At one point it's trying to do horror, then horror comedy, and then it seems like it's ending on this nice note, and then it ends on a really scary, hateful note. It feels like this episode doesn't quite know what it wants to be, so it tries to be a little bit of everything. And the best episodes of this show play to their own strengths. Alright, now we got Sucker of Souls, for much the same reason that The Dump is around this area on the list, I reckon. Kinda average monster tale, just framed in a way that I find more interesting, even if it is more traditional. A bunch of broad-shouldered military types fighting a Dracula. I usually call vampires Draculas because I think it's funny, but I say that this time with more meaning because at the end, literally more Draculas show up. Like the first one was supposed to be actually Dracula, right? Scared of cats and everything, but more of the exact same creature show up. Are they all actually Vlad? I don't know, man. I'm a bit of a sucker for monster stories, so you really don't have to do them all that well for me to like them more than I probably should. Oh, sucker! See what I did there? I didn't even mean to do that. This show sort of has an obsession with military or mercenary groups dealing with supernatural stuff, and that becomes more clear when you look at all 3 seasons together. But out of the 3 in this season that fit that category, this one definitely does it the middle, the second best. I like it more when it's framed that these big, tough, badass people, despite all their high-tech equipment and bad attitudes, are helpless in the face of this impossible evil in front of them. They're supposed to be the baddest there is, but they stumble upon something that leaves them helpless. Predator did it in the 80s, and I think it still works to this day. This one also has a bit of a cooler vibe than Shapeshifters. It doesn't take itself nearly as seriously, which helps it a lot. It can have a bit of fun. Shapeshifters is begging you to take it seriously, and this one tells you right away that you can relax. This isn't fucking Gone with the Wind. But it does fall into the same trap that Blind Spot does, in that all your characters are one note because it focuses on the action so much. So you might think at this point, it seems like if you only have 10 or 15 minutes, you can have action or you can learn about the characters. You have to make a choice. Not true. One of the best episodes in this season accomplishes both and does them better. This one is a really turn your brain off one, not a lot left to the imagination at the end. What you see is what you get, and what you get is, it's not so bad. What's what's next? How about Fish Night? This is a weird one, isn't it? This one is really one thing at the start, and fuck, it's really something else really fast. So this old guy in Sasuke gets stuck in the desert, car busted the fuck down. Honestly, maybe a death sentence, since it seems like it's the 80s or 90s, but they're taking it well. And the short is really just them bickering for a few minutes, and then the old guy drops a weird thought about the canyon they're in being an ocean millions of years back, and why can't fish have ghosts? Like, pretty much just fucking lets that one fly out of nowhere. I guess it makes sense in the context of the episode. They've been sitting there all day, gotta talk about something. But turns out that's actually the second half of the short. I wonder if he started talking about how he's late on his taxes here, there would have been a spectral H&R Block that showed up in the middle of the night instead. So the phantom fish show up, and it looks pretty good, honestly. I think this sort of Telltale Games animation works really well for what they're going for. It looks really pretty suddenly, with these ghostly fish swimming around in the face of our schlubby salesman that we've been sitting in a brown desert with for a few minutes. So anyway, fucking Sasuke goes insane and wants to go swimming with the spirit fishes and gets eaten by a spirit megalodon. Not really much to this one in the ways of themes or commentary or even storytelling in general. It's just some crazy shit that happened, it seems, which sometimes I can really get behind. I don't always need my stories to have something important to say or to be commenting on the human condition. Looks good, the banter is good, ends on a Jesus, really, what the fuck is this guy gonna tell the authorities kind of note. Sometimes just tell me a story, and if it's good, it's good. So there, I guess. I think this one's good, and by extension, everything past this one also must be good. I'll doubtlessly find some stuff to cry about though, don't worry. Alright, let's get all the military versus monsters finally out of the way with The Secret War. This one shares a lot with the other two, Shapeshifters and Sucker of Souls, and does what they're both trying to do, but a little better. It doesn't have the same horrible, serrated, please take me seriously edge of Shapeshifters, and it doesn't have the goofy, over-the-top atmosphere of Sucker of Souls. It finds a comfortable middle ground in a quiet group of soldiers, painfully aware they're up against an evil force they can't hope to defeat. Like Predator again, like I mentioned, but a lot more bleak and gray. This episode is very gray. The atmosphere and attitude of the characters is what carries this one into being good. There's this silent defeatedness that permeates the episode, but all the soldiers are too proud to say what they're all thinking. That they're fucked, and they will not die painlessly. Or maybe they're worried that if someone says it, it somehow becomes true. The monsters I could take or leave. Just sort of your many-legged, roughly dog-to-bear-sized flesh creatures you see when you need an abomination in a lot of modern media. I really didn't need the scene with the sorcerer and explaining where the monsters came from, because the short really isn't about the monsters. It's about a group of people dealing with them, and by extension, their mortality. I would have been fine if there was no explanation at all. The conflict comes down to a lot of shooting and seeing monsters get turned into hamburger meat, or monsters mauling people and then seeing people get turned into hamburger meat, and that's cool and all, doesn't really do much for me, but I really like the final thought in this short, that even staring their own mortality in the face, they can find meaning in it. They send off one of their men with coordinates to bomb the monster's home, and then they go down in a blaze of glory. I like that sentiment. It turns the concept of dying in the face of impossible odds and being horribly annihilated to dying for a reason and having an impact. And I think if a horrible crime against nature creature is currently disemboweling you as you lay there on the cold Russian soil, that can give you just a bit of comfort. Plus, I don't think there's anyone among us that wouldn't mind going down in a smiling blaze of glory with our friends. Seems like a cool way to go. Next we have Ice Age, and this is a pretty cool little idea for a short. Venom and 10 Cloverfield Lane over here move into an apartment together, and that is not the most interesting part of what's going on under this roof. They stumble upon this old beat-up freezer that came with the place and discover that there's a tiny ecosystem of what seems to be human history playing out at hyperspeed. Of course, our two protagonists don't immediately start filming or streaming or thinking of ways to monetize this miracle playing out in front of them, or call a science man or whatever they're called, because if you did that, you lose the cool part of the short, watching what happened in the past and in the future. So that's fine, I can meet the short halfway on that. I think it's pretty fun. Venom and 10 Cloverfield Lane are both somehow mystified by the wonders in front of them, but are still somehow the most underwhelmed I think you could be with this situation and still have a pulse. The correct response to this situation is, ahem. What the fuck is going on? So if this is human history played out in front of them, does that mean at one point we nuke ourselves and then go back to square one? Or has that already happened and we're the second iteration? But we nuked ourselves so bad that it was lost to time. I certainly hope we're the second iteration, because the two characters have nearly no reaction that their doom could be tens of years away according to the freezer. And what does them blinking out of existence at the end mean? Do we ascend to some greater plane of existence? The episode doesn't even really pose these questions, it just happens, and our two main characters are just like, huh, cool. And that's what I'm like too. Huh, cool. Which is good enough for me, I guess. It falls into the good episodes according to me. The one big question for me though is, Venom gets his face singed by a mini nuclear blast. That's radiation heat, right? He took all the radiation of a nuke to the face. His face is gonna melt off his body within a few days, right? I'm not tripping. I'm pretty sure that's just what's gonna happen. I think we have 3 robots up next. I think this is a really ballsy move putting this one as the first episode. It doesn't really fit the feeling as most of the rest of the shorts, and honestly, it doesn't even fit the comedic aspects of them either. This show has a real really in-your-face kind of comedic tone. Most of it comes down to, haha, look, this guy has a dick and balls. And this episode has none of that. It's just 3 robots wandering around a destroyed location, pondering what humanity was and what caused its downfall. They keep it really light, despite the characters wandering around destroyed buildings filled with skeletons. And that's a really good setup for a comedic short. They don't understand human logic or emotion or even leisure activities. But at the same time, they're weirdly human themselves. So the disconnect is where a lot of the funny comes from. Even the most robotic one, the one with the GLaDOS voice, is very sarcastic, which I guess that goes hand in hand. So you have the robots commenting on the collapse of our civilization and how we're stupid and awful. Of course, there's robot humor as well. This is how we do it instead. This is better. Much like an overanalyzing Avatar, it's really hard to comment on jokes because if they're good, I can't add to them. And if they're bad, all I can really say is ugh. And this one is a lot of good jokes in rapid succession. So I don't have a lot to say about it because it's just funny. I feel like a lot of people that start this show wouldn't have minded if they started the next episode and they saw these 3 again. And I feel the same way. I think this is really good. Lucky 13 feels nice. Lucky 13 feels like a warm hug, even though it's about killing maybe aliens, maybe humans, and a lot of friendly humans dying regardless. And I'm not super sure how they pulled that off. The story of a pilot having a deep connection with a piece of machinery is cool on its own, but the story really goes to the efforts to make you feel a connection to the plane as well. The shots when you sort of get a view from the plane's camera perspective, it doesn't really tell you that the ship is an actual character, it's just a camera view, but it really does accomplish something. And having each soldier touch the lucky numbers as they go out for a mission, little stuff like that does a lot. The voice acting from the pilot really sells the whole story. This whole thing rides on the back of that actress, and I think she does a great job. It has some solid action, good ideas for set pieces, and a really nice somber ending that I feel kind of catches you in the feels more than you'd expect. If The Witness is my hot take for being a not so good episode, this is probably my hot take for being one of the better ones. I think everything about it is just solid. The animation, the storytelling, the atmosphere, it's all there. I wish I had more to say about it, but I just think it's good all the way through. Helping Hand is a really cool one. It hits notes of deep, terrifying horror that no monster scenario can. Being alone, truly helpless to your surroundings, and no one is coming to help you. And that's hard to do. Being at the mercy of the vacuum of space, all options totally expended. Well, except for that one option you really don't want to do. What an awesome twist. She has to give up her arm to have a chance at living. What a terrible Jigsaw-esque thought. This one is simple and brutal. And they managed to do it to you twice. You're like, oh, okay, she's gonna freeze her arm, but be able to get back to the ship. A fucking Pyrrhic victory, no doubt. What a horrible situation. But a nice thought for the human condition and our natural grit and determination for simply persisting. Oh wait, no, she fucked it. She has profoundly fucked it. Probably wishes she didn't decide to freeze her throwing arm right about now, huh? Nothing left to throw now, fuck. And the short does pretty effectively trick you here. You think she is actually screwed this time. But the pacing and shots are just right, that you have the same realization that she does as she has it. She does have something to throw. And what a brutal realization that is, executed extremely well. I love the shots leading up to and during the moment she decided to tear her own arm off. Probably figures, shit, I'm not using it anyway. It loses a few points in the fact that I don't know if you can tear your own arm off and not immediately go into shock and die anyway, even if it has been permanently freeze-dried by space. Maybe you can, maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. Maybe it tickles for all I know, I never tried it myself. But for a short that is in this super realistic style they do, looks great by the way, and doesn't have any sci-fi contraption for her to complete a task as simple as getting back to her ship, and they play the whole thing off of this Newton's third law shit, like they're taking the physics real serious, this little bit of incongruent hand-waving doesn't quite work for me. The rest of it though, really good. Thumbs up for me. Seuss is up next, and it's a lot of fun, I think. What is this, 5 or 6? This is 5? Yeah, that sounds about right. The idea of rough and tumble rednecked farmers piloting mechs to do their work and keep their farms and homes safe is super fun. Sometimes this show decides that explaining the sci-fi or horror element is going to be what the episode is about. You're put in a situation and then it's explained to you. This one doesn't take any time to do that, and I think it's a lot better for it. You're just put in this situation with some likable characters, you get what it's about because they show you what it's about, and then you're in the game. Everything is normal and natural for them, so they don't take a moment to talk about it. The anachronist feel of this being a normal looking 20th century farm, but then having all this high-tech stuff around is super cool. I've never seen or thought about something like that before, so for me at least, it's a very novel concept. And putting these big, slow, hulking mechs up against a ton of many-legged abominations of roughly dog to bear size is perfect. They get to show off the firepower big time, but the fight never feels one-sided because there are so many many-legged abominations of roughly dog to bear size. Seriously, the show does it more than you realize. So the action is always good, and you even have more of a human element back at the home with some of the bugs getting through. It finds a way to stay interesting when it could have easily fallen into big mech squashing bugs. Hell yeah, fuck yeah, woo! It's even got a Chekhov's big ugly scarecrow at the end to make things feel like a nice tight little package, before zooming out and showing that they're on some planet and fuck off who knows where. Which is exactly what I liked about it. Didn't take time to explain, it's just where they were. 15 minutes of fun, good enough for me, man. Good Hunting is probably the most stylish of the lot. It has this really easy to look at, soft but sharp art style and animation. It's very pretty. It also goes in a direction that I have to assume no one saw coming when the short starts. I thought thought it was just gonna be another monster story where the humans try their best to prevail, but no, it's not that at all. It's a monster story, but humanity and their advancements are the ones seen as the monsters. It jumps from a time we'd all be familiar with calling a low-tech era into them having transit steam power, and then into having full-blown autonomy, which is a cool way to take it. What a great idea. So all of this advancement has taken away all the magic in the world, and our female lead, as a magical creature, has thus lost her powers. But the show goes much further. Much like the world they live in, the female lead has had progress forced upon her in a uniquely horrific way. The world is no longer magical, it's mechanical, and much the same, she is no longer magical, she's mechanical. What a good idea. The idea to give the girl back her ability to shapeshift through sciences using the advancements of man for good rather than evil is really awesome. Much like the start of the short, it ends on a hunt, the same kind of hunt as well. The father and son duo at the start attempting to stop a man being taken advantage of physically by a spirit they don't understand, and the end, a hunt to stop a group of men looking to do the same to a woman that they understand all too well. As the world has advanced, so is our main character's views, and he sees the real evil now. The evil his father was looking to defeat lies in man. Beyond the Aquila rift gets our lowest spot on the podium. We start in a panic as something has clearly gone wrong in a spaceflight, and the crew of this ship is further away from home than they were ever meant to be. But luckily, a friend of the captain just so happens to be on the exact same space station. What a nice turn of events. Right away, our MC has some questions, but they're explained away quite easily. Too easily, I think, and I think that's on purpose. I think there would be more questions asked than where are we and how are you here? So that's your first clue that something's screwy. The second is that this space station, or wherever they are, seems weirdly empty. We never get any big shots of rooms or anything, but with it being a space station, there has to be people around, not just this lady. Even these two guards, soldiers she's flanked by, are faceless placeholders with black visors. There's another hint. The situation devolves over time into questions finally piling up, and after an outburst from one of our main character's crew members, screaming vague shit like she's not real, she's not who she says she is, before being silenced, it's time to air everything out. If you're not pretty much riveted at that point, man, I don't know what excites you. You gotta be into some devious shit. The show does a great job at trying to make you feel for this creature as it pleads with the captain to just let it go. He won't understand. He's not ready. It's like it really has a good heart, but as we switch to reality in some sort of horrible nest or hive, and the spider reveals itself slowly, first looking like the form of a woman before showing its entire terrifying form, a mix of emotions hit you. Fuck, that thing is horrifying, but it was just trying to psychically comfort him. It seemed genuinely upset. But then again, it spoke as if it had done this many times. Its experience, saying that the men never understand. Is it evil? Maybe it's a victim of being stuck where it is and is trying to comfort people. Does it do this as some sort of emotional vampire act, wanting to be human or to have a connection? What a skin-crawling thought, a giant psychic spider romancing you in your own head. You're none the wiser until she finally reveals herself. You can call me shallow all you want. If my dream girl turned out to actually be a 6-foot-tall psychic spider, I'd probably have to cut it off. The runner-up for me is Sonnys Edge. I said somewhere in this video a while back that this show is at its best when it can introduce you to a world or concept, find an interesting moment to explore in it, give you a really strong character or two, and tie it all up with a great twist. And Sonnys Edge does it all. Nearly every line before the fight starts is both character and world building intertwined, and that's not easy to do without it sounding clunky as hell, but this short nails it. The art is where the show redlines too. It's putting everything it's got into it. It's gonna blow its own fucking back out. What really blows me away for most of it is the lighting. When the team does their WWE walkout, this shit looks gas. And even during the fight, the dynamic lighting is really impressive. And it hits just what I want in my shows too. Cool monsters, cool fights. I never said I was highbrow. Man, I want more of this. I want this to be a show. The concept is so cool. Underground psychic monster fights in this gritty, grimy, grungy city filled with scumbags. Sign me the fuck up. Sunny is a great protagonist right away, even before the super cool twist. Not fighting in these tournaments for money or fame, but because she's quietly seething all the time for what these people have done to her. Hell yeah, a hero with a little bit of kick, some spice. That's not something this show does often. A lot of times, the main character is helpless in the face of whatever is happening in the episode, but in this one, Sunny is satisfyingly in the driver's seat. Even more so when you realize the twist and what her titular edge actually is. She's not out there playing a game, piloting a monster. She's fighting for her life every time. Everything about this hits just perfect for me. I think it's awesome. And at number 1, we have Zema Blue. And I didn't like it on first watch. I didn't get it. And I still might not get it right now, honestly. It might be too high concept. But man, did the idea for the ending ever stick with me. I found myself thinking about this one more than any other. A robot that does more than ponder the mysteries of the universe. He goes out and tries to solve them, creating these great works of art. A genius and innovator, seen as the pinnacle of humanity. Unbeknownst to humanity, he is a machine, of course. Becoming tired with it all and returning to a state where he's not even capable of thought. Essentially ending himself, but spiritually persisting as the one part he's always found the most important. Have you ever had that thought, if you were truly immortal in your human form, not only would you watch your friends and family die, but far from now, billions of years in the future, the sun would explode and you'd be flung off into the void of space for eons, helpless and alone. That is true hell. This short captures that sort of feeling wonderfully. Zema, who started as this simple machine, who was evolved to this impossible impossible mechanical wonder, has done it all. Done everything he wanted to do, and now he's in the void. He's been the greatest for hundreds of years at this point, tried to answer life's big questions, created art that only he could. But above everything, he yearns for when he wasn't in this situation of having it all be done. At least that's how I take it. And even though the thought is troubling, he reverts himself back to his most primitive state. A pool cleaning robot barely smart enough to do its own job. Losing who he is in the process, but gaining the ability to be simply satisfied once again. And I'm sure that hits a chord with a lot of us in modern day. We wish we could just be simply satisfied. Fuck man, this explores some thoughts I'm not even really comfortable with myself confronting. But this short has a lovely sad atmosphere, unique great art, and a story that will stick with you. Chef's kiss. So that's what I think about the first season of Love, Death, and Robots. It's surprisingly good. Even the hard misses are just forgettable. They never find a way to be actually bad. And the really good ones have concepts and thoughts that you might not find in any other mainstream show. I think this really has a place amongst the great anthology shows. I've never done a ranking kind of video like this, so I should just say this. This is in fact not opinion, it is objective truth, and I'm correct all the way through. I could put this video under educational, honestly. That is not a joke. I am very serious. A lot. If for some reason you watch this entire video and you haven't watched the show, go watch it. You're missing out. Don't skip over it the next time it shows up on your Netflix scroll. Patreon shoutouts. If you want to see 2 brand new videos from me, you can support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. The link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shoutouts of all go to my top patrons. Agent Rhino, who can tell you the exact coordinates of the closest leatherback turtle, and it's usually alarmingly close. Danger Stranger, who has had a Connect 4 rivalry with his local legislature. And the best of 5 all comes down to this Saturday to decide if murder is legal. Fritz Sullivan, who can create a plasma globe effect by sticking his finger in the air and humming as loud as he can. Jack, who was the first in the actual human super race. Hopefully he doesn't mess that up. Kevin Hall, who found the Holy Grail, melted it down, and now has a holy miniature of a Ford F-150. Omega Fighter, who, if he goes under a table and bumps his head, warps to some other table somewhere else in the world at random. It's kind of annoying, honestly. Sean Martin, who took a bonsai tree that was being guarded by a 700-pound tiger. He saved a tree from a cat. Stephanie Riches, who can just make up constellations and have anyone believe her. You ever hear the Big Dipper? That's her. Thomas Lautenbach got a deal with a realtor that if you survive jumping off a 4-story house, he could have it, and now he has a luxury 4-story home with plenty of wheelchair access. Thiago Nascimento, who has a 2-2 record in polar bear fights, and he's looking to go positive. I don't know if he can survive a 3rd loss. Varunda, who can scream a Rubik's Cube solved. And Whitrow, who trained a rattlesnake to do his laundry. And of course my god overanalyzers, 2 Boots Are Beat, Ali QPZM, Andrew Watchford, Austin Gallup, Be My Valentine, Braden Shanahan, Brando Espinoza, Kate Stinson, Charles Barnett, Christopher D. Sanson II, Dizzy Payne, DJ Jax, Dominic Saint, Distant, Ethan Standel, Glintlock, It's Curtin, Jacob Whitecotton, Jackson, John Ajaka, Josie Tiffany, Justin Fletchall, KT and Den B, Leon, Nathan William Sizemore, Nickel Pickle 582, Nicholas Abbott, Peter Bayron, Phil, Philip Conti, Reese, Rocket Mist, Ryan Maxwell, Samuel Vanderplaat, Super Snipper, Vavina Lockfire, Yozen, and the Bareface persists. Next up, come on, copyright god, please be one of the big ones.